Hello, Christian Academy. Dr. Shell here. Well, we are back to remote learning, and so we are in our homes staying safe and healthy. And unfortunately, we're not able to get together like we have been doing, even though we are already sort of doing chapel in modified form. But now we are back to having chapel at home. So I hope maybe you and your family have a chance. Maybe you can listen and watch together. This is right before Thanksgiving. And last week, I told you about a gross story about how Elijah was fed by ravens and how they brought him scraps and leftovers. But we learned that God might give us what we need, but not always what we want. There's another story in the Bible that's sort of nasty a little bit. When the children of Israel left Egypt. Remember, they left Egypt after the Passover, and they crossed the Red Sea, and God was with them, and He was taking care of them. And after a while, they came to a situation where they didn't have any more food, and they were getting a little uptight about that. Well, you could imagine, out in the desert, no food, very little water, and they were getting worried and anxious. And Moses told the people, God is going to provide for you. And he said, in the morning, God's going to bring you bread from heaven. And this story is told in Exodus chapter 16. And so in the morning when they went out, there was this dew on the ground. And as the dew dried up, there was this stuff left on the ground. And it says, and when the layer of dew evaporated, behold, on the surface of the wilderness, there was a fine, flaky-like thing, fine as a frost on the ground. And the sons of Israel saw it. They said to one another, what is it? They did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread which the Lord has given to you to eat. So the Lord commanded, every man gather of it as much as you should eat, and you should take an omer apiece according to the number of persons in your tent. And so the sons of Israel did that. Some gathered much, and some gathered little. And when they measured out an omer, he who had gathered much had no excess, he who gathered little had no lack, and every man gathered as much as he should eat. So this manna was all over the place. In fact, that's what the word means. Manna means, what is it? This stuff was all over the ground. They went out and gathered it up, and they were told to gather just a certain amount that would match the number of people in their home. So if you had a big family, you could gather enough for your whole family. Just maybe two of you, gather enough for just the two of you. And so God provided everybody just what they needed. Now, he were told not to gather extra and not to keep it overnight. So you had whatever you gathered, you ate it, and then you shouldn't gather too much. And Moses told the people, do not leave any until the morning. But they did not listen to Moses and left some part of it until morning. And it bred worms and became nasty. And Moses was angry with them. So day by day, they gathered up what they needed. God provided for what they needed. And they were told not to try to get too much because it would just get nasty anyway. And this story reminds me, in my wife's family, we always get together with my wife's family in Missouri. And sadly, we're not going to be able to do that this year. Probably many of your Thanksgiving plans have changed because of the pandemic, and we want to keep everybody safe. So we're not going to be going to Missouri. But when we did go to Missouri, and we would get together with this huge family gathering, and one of the things we would do after we ate dinner, and maybe people would be watching football, and some people would be playing board games, and some people would just sit around and visit, and then we would pass around paper, and we would write down the gifts that we wanted for Christmas. Now, I understand that sort of it makes sense because it's kind of practical. We're all in the same place, and different members of our family wanted to know what we would want for Christmas, and so we would write it down on a piece of paper. But it struck me kind of funny that on this day that we set aside to be thankful for all the stuff we have, that we actually put together a list of the things that we still want. And this year, we're not going to be doing that because we're not going to be together. In fact, we're just going to be here with my immediate family. My family of 5 will be here in our house together. And you know what we're discovering, I think, is that And that's enough. I think this year is more than maybe any other year. We need to be thankful that God has provided for us just enough. And sometimes we get so used to having extra and having just what we want and always handy dandy where we want it. And we're discovering that, you know what? God provides for us and He takes care of us and He gives us what we need, not necessarily what we want, and He gives us enough. And we might have gotten a little used to having more than enough, more than we need. And it's probably a good thing for us to stop and be thankful for what we actually have and realize that, you know what, it's enough. Yeah, I'd love to see my extended family, but it's enough that my family is here and we're safe, we're healthy. In fact, my son has had the coronavirus. He was a little sick about a week and a half ago. We've all been quarantining. We're all locked in my home. We're not going anywhere. He's getting much better, and he was never very terribly sick. No one else in the family has gotten sick. So we have a lot to be thankful for. I have to admit, since we have been in quarantine, it's been kind of funny sometimes around mealtime because we be trying to make up something, and we realize we're missing an ingredient or two, something we'd like to have. And, there's a Kroger that's not even half a mile from my house. You can easily walk there, but not in quarantine. Even though Kroger's right there, we have to learn to just use what we have. And you know what? It's more than enough. We are not hurting at all. We had some food delivered and that was fine. And we are doing just great. And we're realizing that, you know what? We've gotten so used to having everything we want just when we want it. If we stop for a minute and realize, you know what? It's a little not what we want, but we got plenty. We have just enough. And so I want to encourage you this Thanksgiving, even though you might be really disappointed, and you can tell some of the adults in our lives are a little nervous and anxious, we can trust God that He's going to make sure we have just what we need, not always what we want. And He's going to take care of us and make sure we have enough. So let's be extra thankful this year. Let's pray for our parents, our grandparents, and others that are going to be a little upset this year because we're not going to be able to do some of the things that they'd like to do. And they'll need to know from you that you're trusting God and thanking God that He's provided enough and He's provided what we need, and we can continue to trust Him. The Bible tells us in everything, give thanks. Not necessarily for everything. Sometimes things happen that are not good. Sometimes things happen that we're not happy about. But we can be thankful in those things. In the middle of it, we can still be thankful that God provides for us what we need and just enough. So God bless you, and I'll see you on the other side of Thanksgiving. God bless you. I'll be praying for you. I want you to pray for me and my family too.